Two major defense companies are in a battle for the future of Canada's fighter jet fleet. Sweden's Saab Gripen versus U.S. firm Lockheed Martin's F-35s. This comes after Prime Minister Mark Carney ordered a review of Canada's F-35 contract with Lockheed Martin.
Locked in a trade fight with Donald Trump, you may have heard that the Carney government is reconsidering its multi-billion-dollar purchase of American F-35 fighter jets.
Canada reviews a deal to buy U.S.-made F-35s. The reason for that review? Trump's trade war on Canada.
Most people write off the Saab Jazz 39 Gripen before the conversation even starts. It gets labeled as small, defensive, and outmatched, a jet built to patrol borders rather than dominate the sky. Critics love to compare it to bringing a knife to a gunfight when facing heavier fighters. Then Red Flag Alaska, 2006, quietly tore that story apart. On the very first day of the exercise, Swedish Gripens reportedly scored 10 air-to-air kills without a single loss. Those encounters included 1 Eurofighter Typhoon and 5 F-16 Block 50s, all while remaining undetected. In one close range fight, a single Gripen pilot took down 5 F-16 alone. The numbers come from Swedish sources, and while the U.S. Air Force never confirmed them publicly, the results were strong enough to earn the Gripen another invitation. So why has this aircraft been underestimated for so long, and what does that blind spot mean for Canada as it faces one of the biggest defense choices in its history? Understanding why the results shock so many people requires looking at how the Gripen had been framed for years before it ever faced serious scrutiny. On paper, the aircraft seemed easy to dismiss. A single engine going up against twin-engine fighters, less internal fuel, a smaller payload, and a design philosophy built around efficiency rather than raw force. Defense analysts often reduced it to a budget option, a lightweight solution meant for countries that could not afford the top-tier platforms. In comparison, its rivals looked untouchable. The F-15 Eagle carried a reputation as a pure air dominance machine with an unmatched combat record. The F-16 Fighting Falcon had decades of real-world experience across multiple wars and theaters. The Eurofighter Typhoon stood as Europe's technological statement, engineered during the Cold War to counter advanced Soviet aircraft, and not coincidentally to outperform the Gripen itself. Against that backdrop, Sweden's fighter appeared modest, even restrained. That perception was shaped by context as much as capability. Sweden was not part of NATO at the time. It had not fought a major war in generations. There was no combat footage, no dramatic headlines, no powerful alliance pushing the aircraft onto the global stage. The Gripen had been built for a country with limited resources, vast territory, and a defensive mindset shaped by neutrality. Analysts drew a simple conclusion from that background. This was an aircraft for guarding airspace, not for taking the fight to anyone else. It could save money, patrol borders, and deter lightly, but it was not expected to win against elite fighters flown by top-tier air forces. That assumption felt logical, widely accepted, and completely wrong. Red Flag Alaska exists to strip away assumptions. Run by the United States Air Force, the exercise is designed to push pilots and aircraft to their limits under conditions that closely mirror real combat. Complex scenarios, heavy electronic warfare, restricted support, and constant pressure are all part of the environment. The goal is survival and effectiveness, not comfort. In 2006, Sweden brought the Gripen into that arena and was assigned to the Red Team, playing the role of the adversary. The opposition was anything but forgiving. U.S. Air Force F-16, Block 50s, Eurofighter Typhoons from Europe, and the F-15C Eagle formed the backbone of the opposing force. Support assets were limited. Airborne early warning coverage was constrained. Ground-based assistance was reduced. The Gripen was expected to struggle. What followed challenged nearly every assumption built around the aircraft. Instead of relying on traditional airborne warning systems, the Gripen formation relied on its data-linked network. One aircraft would briefly activate its radar, collect situational data, and pass that information instantly to the rest of the group. The remaining aircraft stayed electronically silent, avoiding detection while maintaining a complete picture of the battle space. Situational awareness became shared rather than centralized. The opposing pilots often did not know where the Gripens were until they were already engaged. This approach turned a perceived weakness into a decisive advantage. According to a former Swedish flight test engineer, the results on the first day were startling. 10 air-to-air kills were recorded during the opening phase of the exercise. Those included 1 Eurofighter Typhoon and 5 F-16 Block 50s. None of the Gripens were lost during that period. In one close-range engagement, a single Gripen pilot defeated 5 F-16 Block 50s alone, a scenario that traditional performance charts would predict going the other way. Beyond the kill ratios, the Gripen stood out in another critical area. It was the only aircraft that completed every planned sortie across all weather conditions during the exercise, a measure of reliability that mattered deeply in sustained operations. Skeptics pointed out that these figures came from Swedish sources and that caution was fair. Exercises can be shaped by rules, scenarios, and reporting biases. Independent confirmation mattered, and it arrived from an unexpected place. Norway provided it. In a separate set of engagements, 3 Swedish Gripens faced 5 F-16s from the Royal Norwegian Air Force. Norwegian pilots train to NATO standards and operate the same aircraft used by many alliance members. The second round repeated the result. The third round finished 5-1, with Norway scoring a single kill. These results were publicly recorded by a NATO ally, not promoted as marketing material. They demonstrated that the Gripen could consistently match and often outperform a fighter with extensive real combat history from Iraq to Afghanistan. Attention followed, but skepticism lingered. Exercises are controlled environments, critics argued, and real operations introduce uncertainty, politics, and consequences that simulations cannot fully capture. That question remained unresolved until Sweden made a historic shift. In March 2024, after more than 2 centuries of neutrality, Sweden officially joined NATO as its 32nd member. The transition was not ceremonial for long. On March 11th, less than a day after accession, Gripens flew their first missions under NATO command. In the morning, Swedish Gripens and Belgian F-16 intercepted a Russian Tu-134 flying without a flight plan over the Baltic Sea. Later that same day, Swedish Gripens and German Eurofighters intercepted a Russian An-26. There was no extended integration period and no gradual easing into alliance operations. The Gripens coordinated seamlessly with Allied aircraft and NATO command systems, operating as if the partnership had existed for years. The pattern continued in April 2025, when Gripens deployed to Poland as part of NATO's enhanced air policing mission. Operating alongside British Eurofighter Typhoons, Swedish pilots carried out regular intercepts of Russian aircraft approaching or violating Allied airspace. These missions were not training events. They involved real aircraft, real geopolitical tension, and real consequences. In that environment, the Gripen demonstrated consistency, reliability, and operational effectiveness. It did not draw attention through spectacle. It earned respect through performance. This operational record reshaped the conversation, especially for countries weighing long-term defense decisions. Canada found itself at the center of that debate. Ottawa had signed a contract to purchase 88 Saab F-35s from Lockheed Martin and had already taken delivery of the first 16. The plan promised advanced stealth, deep strike capability, and tight integration with the United States forces. Then political realities shifted. Donald Trump returned to the White House and threatened tariffs on Canada's aerospace sector. Trade tensions escalated. Questions about alliance reliability surfaced quietly in Washington. Against that backdrop, Sweden presented an alternative path. Saab proposed something few defense deals ever offer: a full production line in Canada, not limited to final assembly. The package included 72 Gripens and 6 GlobalEye airborne early warning aircraft. The economic impact was substantial. An estimated 12,600 jobs would be created, with 9,000 tied to Gripen production and 3,600 linked to GlobalEye, developed in partnership with Bombardier. The proposal included full technology transfer, including access to source code. Canada would control upgrades, modifications, and integration without needing external approval. Supply chains would be domestic. Operational independence would be real, not theoretical. That model has precedent. Brazil pursued a similar path with the Gripen. Brazilian engineers trained in Sweden. Local suppliers entered the production chain. A technology ecosystem grew around the program. Export potential followed. Ukraine has signed a letter of intent to purchase between 100 and 150 Gripens. France and Germany have expressed interest in the Global Eye platform. If production were based in Canada, Ottawa could become an exporter, generating long-term economic returns rather than sustaining perpetual imports. Cost remained the issue no government could ignore. In 2012, IHS Janes Aerospace and Defense Consulting published a comprehensive study on fighter operating costs. The Gripen C and D variants averaged about $4,700 per flight hour. Comparable F-16, Block 40 and 50 variants came in roughly 49% higher. The FA-18 Super Hornet ranged from $11,000 to $24,000. The Rafale averaged $16,500. The Eurofighter Typhoon approached $18,000. Estimates for the F-35A range from $21,000 to over $31,000 per hour, based on data from the Royal Australian Air Force and the US Navy. More recent figures from Saab place the Gripen E and F at approximately $22,100 per hour, including fuel, maintenance personnel, and logistics. By comparison, the F-16V sits around $25,600, while the F-35A exceeds $46,000 per hour. Different accounting methods produce different totals, but across every methodology, the same conclusion appears. The Gripen remains among the lowest cost fighters to operate. The debate, however, did not remain technical. The United States Ambassador to Canada, Pete Hoekstra, issued a public warning that walking away from the F-35 could put NORAD cooperation at risk. The message was subtle but unmistakable. This decision carried political weight. It tested alliance loyalty. Pressure followed through trade, diplomacy, and strategic signaling. Inside Canada, voices clashed. Former Royal Canadian Air Force leaders, including Tom Lawson. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe and stay with the channel, because this conversation is far from over.